Hi, everybody. Hello. Call the meeting to order at 6:01. We got our minute taker and Justin and Liz are both online tonight, Vicky. Thank you. And timekeeper, Mike, you
Sure.
just help me out a little bit if you can. All right, and at this time, we'll open the floor to public comment. Anyone in the audience or online? Coming up, friends.
Hi, everyone, Shauna, from Bristol. So, local education agencies or LEAs that intend to use federal funds, including ESSER funds, for construction or remodeling projects must comply with all applicable federal requirements. Well, I do not believe that this was intentional to go. Well, I do not believe it's intentional for an error to have happened. Unfortunately, we did not submit written approval from the school board for some of the projects that were using ESSER funds. I believe that the reasonable interpretation of the ends policy due to policy governance has potentially caused the school board to operate outside of federal and state regulations. Written approval of the school board, not the superintendent. The superintendent is separate, but the school board is required to be submitted with federal grant requirements for construction. I believe that policy governance and the interpretation of the ends is something that has put us in jeopardy more than once. And the system of rigorous monitoring is the other problem. Because we're only utilizing one form of monitoring, we are missing many problems. And having checks and balances from the public and from different types of monitoring would help us to prevent these types of errors from happening. But going forward, we have to work together in order to make sure that we are all doing what we need to do. As a community, we need to support our school board and we need to support our superintendent and our schools, but we also need the same from all of you. Community engagement and parental involvement is a requirement of Title I funds. In addition, ELP grants cite that there's an advisory committee involving parents and community members, but somehow no one I know has ever even heard of this committee. Where is the involvement from the community and from the parents? Because I certainly have never heard of it and I don't see it. And that's one of the ways that we have, as a community, are given this in order to make sure that we are being served properly. I think that what you're doing tonight by allowing community engagement prior to the budget process is a huge step. But I really urge you all to implement this in a much more rigorous way. Because all it takes is just sometimes an extra set of eyes or an extra voice to point out things before the mistakes happen. A mistake that is, I do not believe it was an intentional mistake, but it is something that could cause serious issues in the future. So it's important that we all work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Anyone on Zoom joining us would like to give a public comment? Okay. We'll move on then. All right. Can I please get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Is that the right language?
Yes,
Okay.
Daniela,
Second.
Kathy, all those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Can I add one thing? Sorry, this is Liz.
Yes.
Could we consider adding to the agenda, setting a date for the vote?
We're also meeting again next week, Liz, and I wonder if we'll be, I don't know, we can check in with the board, but how are people
Yeah.
feeling?
If anybody else is interested in that, I would be.
I'm interested in the changes in the state around the third vote and the fact that there's legislation floating right now, that the third vote could be a pretty serious change if the legislation passes. And so I want to hear more about what the State House of Representatives, am I using the right terminology again? I'm gonna state our legislators are doing, because there's a possibility that they may create an additional penalty for districts that don't pass on the third round. And since we're there, just want to find out what that regulation is.
Mhm.
I'm not personally feeling like we're on a place to pick a date, but that's my personal opinion.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Melissa.
Okay, thank you for considering.
Let's
I
put-
appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, let's put a pin on it, Liz, and perhaps by next week, we might feel a little differently about
Okay.
that. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, Liz. Okay. So all those in favor of approving the agenda as is, please say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. And we'll move on down to the board management and governance. Discussion A is community interactions questionnaire and community engagement logistics. So this is a chance for us to come up with what types of questions we are interested in asking our community members, how we might do that, what we envision it looking like, and how we can move forward rather quickly to get that done. So I'll just open the floor, people start floating ideas. I know you all have them.
I would say before we start looking at a questionnaire questions, I think we need to help set some ground rules about how those meetings are, what they're gonna look like, in terms of participation and what we are going to do and what we aren't going to do.
Okay.
I think we aren't going to take people's name at the meeting with specific comments. I'm gonna hop in here and say, so I do focus groups with community members around school board work, and I'm so excited about this. I brought notes. This is definitely my favorite thing, but to say, there are lots of things that we do when we're doing research you wouldn't necessarily do in a school board meeting, but that if we're hearing people talk about fears around trust and retaliation, then it feels like it's going to be super important that when we have meetings, that we're able to create a space that feels safe and that people know that their names aren't going to be taken and shared or attached to their comments unless that's something that they specifically ask for. So that would be one of my ground rules. But I also had an idea about lots of different ways people can share out without necessarily having to actually talk to one of us too. But I am also mindful of not taking up all of your time today, so. Do you have other thoughts?
I was just thinking my vision of, and I guess that's where we have to figure out our vision, right? Of like, what exactly does this look like? Was a space of hearing and collecting information. That we can take back and then see where the four towns merge together in terms of, consistent or heavy feedback. To kind of weigh that out to see how that impacts what the recommendations towards a new budget would be.
And so that brings us to like what the goals of the meetings are, right? And I assume that part of it is fact finding, right? Like, what are people's primary, concerns or things they're worried about or things that they really want to make sure that they want to tell us? And then also what are the things they're really excited about or proud about in our district? So doing those two things, but helping us think through like, what are community priorities around our budget? But then the other part feels to me like it might be a little bit of building community and giving people a chance to be able to feel connected to the school board and chatting. I'm looking at very serious faces right now, but I'm like, I'm my southern side is starting to come out for just a moment, but to say that like being able to talk and being able to feel comfortable, being able to share frustrations and joys feels incredibly important. And we in New England do not do that same kind of like chit chat on the side of the road usually. I feel like I'm scaring people because I want to talk so much. But it's definitely like something that I think is really important that we make that space with our community.
How are other people feeling about that idea?
I agree with everything that she's said, like making a safe space for our community to feel comfortable speaking to us and putting their concerns out there, letting us know what's going well and what isn't going well. That can help us influence where we want to redirect our financial resources when we come back to the table next week and talk about the budget.
Yeah, Brad.
Leading up to the last vote, I kind of undertook a bit of an experiment to sort of impose my, oops, sorry, sort of some of my thinking directly on Front Porch Forum and, in Stocksboro. So essentially taking the material that the board had sort of decided upon, summarizing it only, in my own words and coming from me as opposed to from MAUSD and from the district or from Patrick or from you, Aaron. The feedback I got on that was pretty positive. I had a number of people who said who said that they appreciated that I took the time to do that and that they have felt not connected to the school board members individually, just on the school board as a collective. And some of the couple of other comments, a couple of people actually said that they appreciated the things that came out, from the district and that we all post, every week or two, but it just seemed a little canned and cookie cutter.
Sure.
And so I just share that I did get a number of, very positive comments back from, sort of reaching out and kind of making more personalizing it a little bit. So, I don't know, but that kind of goes to
That's also
what
making
you
me,
were saying.
as you're saying that, it's also making me wonder, does everybody have the same comfort level with like, well, again, running small, like people coming in and talking about their concerns or fears or worries, like, because I'm realizing I don't want to assume or put anybody in a position that like you have to do something. You're like, this is not my cup of tea.
Well, I guess that's why we're sort of coming up with ground rules, so that maybe that sets the standard and people can swim in that space and feel comfortable themselves with taking comments and criticisms.
I'm gonna keep going, but I'm also totally ready to do some like turn and talk activities and be like, talk to the person sitting next to you. I know, Mike, you're still teaching right now. I need your teaching strategies with students, because I don't want to be the only person talking. But the idea of having at least 2 people at a meeting feels also really smart, because then you're not trying to remember everything all by yourself. You're also allowing people to meet multiple members of the board, and then usually somebody can take notes if you're feeling more introverted, maybe you're the person who takes notes.
I'm sort of thinking that most people would be at it, like this would be something that each town is meeting with their town, with all the representatives of that town. Is that not what other people are thinking?
I was thinking,
yeah.
okay.
Okay,
That is what I was thinking, but I also heard some concerns that, I've also just heard concerns, people really want to make sure they know who's going to be at the meeting and who they can talk to.
sure. But we
Does that
can
make
make that
sense?
pretty clear when we
Yeah.
send out, yeah.
I think it's really important to be clear that this is a budget conversation.
Mhm.
We aren't talking, like, there's other things that people want to talk about related to the schools. But this purpose is to serve for the budget conversation and creating a budget.
Mhm.
I have an idea about that, because people are gonna wanna talk about all their feelings about what's going on. Like, this is a big feelings moment. That, one of the things that we can do is ask some of those big, broad questions about, what do you want the board to know, as well as like, what are your budget priorities? But we can also ask some of those big questions of, have you been to a training where like somebody puts up a big piece of sticky, I'm sorry, I should have talked to you also about your teaching strategies for people who are reticent. Probably lots of you in there are teachers. where you have like a big sticky note, big like piece of white paper, and then everybody writes on their sticky note and you get to put up your comments.
Mhm.
Well, somebody in the community had mentioned this as an idea to allow people to also participate in another way that might feel confidential or safe if they didn't feel like talking.
Mhm.
And that could be a way that we give space for feelings on the sticky notes. So if you want to say like, what are you worried about? Here's a big piece of paper like out in the front of the door coming in, that you can put that up, but we could also put it into the survey. Because I understand that we're focused on the budget, but I'm also worried about the fact that we don't have trust in the community. And I think that it has to be a combination of showing that we're listening as well as showing that we're focused on the budget.
They make an app for that too,
They do.
where you can like scan the code or whatever,
Yes,
and then it like pops up.
yes, the
Awesome.
QR codes, yes.
Which won't be reachable to all of us. No.
So we could also do paper forms,
Mhm.
and some of the research I was reading a couple weeks ago, just for the class I was teaching, which is on community school partnerships, was about how libraries are basically like the safe space for any sort of school conflict because they're belong to the community. But they are not of the school per se. And so I was also thinking that maybe we could run some paper surveys, put them up in the library or wherever that, I don't know where our places are. Somebody said Moncton has like somebody has like a bulletin board or some, I don't remember what town it was. But we seem to have libraries in every town. So that might be a good place to, I'm jumping ahead. I'm sorry, Erin. Do you need to rein me in? Do you want to give me like, I'm only allowed to talk 3 times?
I'm just letting it all sort of spill out
Okay.
because then people will build off of those
Yeah.
ideas. But we do have a lot of things floating around. So how are we gonna make it manageable for next week?
We have our big paper out front of our meeting areas, so people can put up their ideas there. They don't even have to come in and talk if they don't want to, or they can put up their feelings and then come on in and give ideas. We do the survey that Liz has been talking about, really simple. Run with a promise that we don't ask anybody for their email address, right? But I was like, we don't want people from Burlington telling us their thoughts about our budget, so I'm still not totally sure, like, how do we make sure the people who are giving us feedback are people who are in some way connected to the district? I don't know how to do that, but then we have the survey that goes out. There's a QR code. You can scan it. We have paper surveys. Maybe we offer them at the library.
So this is what you're envisioning though, is sort of like a rolling engagement instead of a one-stop shop idea.
I am looking for as many ways as possible that are relatively simple and consistent.
Yeah.
That allow people to engage.
Yeah.
So every library, we have an event for each town, right? Because each town has a library.
Well, did people decide on that?
Oh,
I
this
don't-
is still my brainstorming.
Right, yeah, okay.
I don't know if they have enough space.
Yeah.
New Haven might, yeah, but we'll find a space, okay.
And then that we can do some combination of giving people an opportunity to share in writing. And to also share on the survey, I'm even like, we could even put up in our next meeting, put up paper out here. So people can write before they come in, because I'm like, how many times do we have people in the board meetings? Who have things to say, but we don't ever know what they want to say, because not everybody's feeling courageous to speak up, like. Just that question, like, what do you want the school board to know? Or like, why did you come tonight? That could be helpful, but I'm jumping ahead, right? We're just focused on the budget right now. This is just long-term.
Yeah, this is the starting point, right? So how can we get it done well? For this one time, then we can build off that idea and make it bigger as we move.
I wish there was a way to like type into a
We have-
Google Doc,
Yeah, we need
so
like
we
a
all
dry
could
erase board.
see, yeah.
Yes, do we
It's
have,
like-
we're in a school, do we have any like poster paper?
What are we talking about right now? What I'm,
Brainstorm to like, to
Yeah,
throw
I'm-
the ideas at the wall. To
Oh.
see them.
Or even start laying out a document to accompany this.
I am
Yeah, I
making a
think
document.
You just can't.
You just can't see it.
Sure.
So you can share it with the Zoom account and I can share screens. It does then take it away from your notes and makes it a public document, so.
We don't have to tonight, Erin. I don't want to put you on the spot for that. We don't have to tonight, but in the brainstorm like this, like,
Having it, having the opted, so. yeah.
and then, I foresee. Like, each of the 4 towns, like, we each walk in with a document that's like,
Everyone has the same thing.
yeah,
Yeah,
here's the layout,
Yeah.
here are the questions.
I agree with
That
that.
here are the ground rules.
So why don't we step back then and start from ground rules?
Okay.
And we'll nail those down, what we want for ground rules, then we'll move into questions and then logistics. That way it's just, we're making it. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so ground rules,
I'm proposing, confidentiality.
yeah.
I also heard that one of our ground rules is that we wanted groups of people going in, so school board members going in together.
I
As
think each,
representatives from each town.
Yeah, so you're not just having like one person.
right, every member of the, yeah, yes.
We're gonna
And
stick to what pertains to the budget that evening.
So setting the expectation.
So we're definitely doing it in the evening? Or?
No, we haven't decided that yet. We'll get to the logistics
event.
part in a second, but yeah, Barb.
I was just wondering, did you say sticking to the budget?
The
The concerns
conversation
about
will
the
be.
budget? Okay, so I see a little bit of a conflict if we say, we ask questions like, what are you worried about? Because there could,
Pertaining to the budget.
so, yeah, I think it's probably.
I think they intersect,
Yeah.
they intersect so much, like if people say that they're concerned about our lack of special ed resources, that tells me right off,
Mhm.
like, maybe we should allocate. That's my thought, I'm just
Yeah,
throwing out
no,
where my
I-
head was at, right? Then that's something, if that's a theme that we see across all of our towns, and that's something all of us around the table really wanna take into account when we re-engage on the
Okay,
dollars and
Thanks,
cents.
yeah.
Yeah.
But what if the budget so often feels like it is a thing unto itself and that we lose the connection to the actual point of schooling, right, of kids and students and families and the community and the teachers. The Fine Arts Festival that's happening right now, this is my first time obviously going, was kind of like knocked my socks off, so if you haven't got to see all of it. It's amazing. The birds, the sculptures, anyway, I'm sure that, but it reminded me walking into the gym and being here of like, oh, this is why we're doing this work. It's all about our kids having a place where they feel successful, where they are successful, where they're hopefully healthily regulated. So is there a way that we can focus the budget conversation and remind people it's about students or like, but I also think teachers, staff.
It
What-
depends on how, sorry to cut you off, it depends on how much leeway you want to give people, like framing is great, right? Having this sort of, yes, we're here for the kids, but how much do we want to steer the conversation by even having suggestive language, right? If we're doing it sort of an open-ended survey, which is what this feels like, it's going to be an open-ended question, you fill in the blank for us. We would be careful about how we build those questions so they're not leading to certain answers. That
What
just-
if we started each conversation? Please bear in mind that what I'm sharing right now is something that somebody who works in the AOE had recommended because she was studying why school boards are effective. This was before I'd been appointed here, so it wasn't like I'm talking to the AOE about how we can make better school boards. But starting with basically like, what are our hopes and dreams? Common elementary school question. What's our vision as a community around education? Like, what do we actually want as a community? And if you set the time on that, like part of our logistics, and we're looking at like, I'm throwing out times, an hour, we did like 15 minutes. And to give people the chance that if it's a big meeting, you can always have people talk to each other and then share out. Or if it's a small meeting, then you just talk together. Because that situates everybody coming in like, it helps manage the feelings a little bit because we start from a positive perspective, asset-based, not what's everything that's wrong.
So is that a logistics or a ground rule?
It's a brainstorming process.
How about more ground rules? I'm gonna type it into the logistics, though.
But if our ground rules are just thinking about the budget, I'd say the budget, what I would like to amend to that is that the budget needs to be the primary focus, but we might need to soften the edges of that.
I think we have to be careful too, because there is a reason why we're doing these meetings. And it's to give us more information about what the community needs as answers for their questions that will help us move forward for this budget and for the next budget. I don't see this as an open town hall discussion. I mean, I see this as a very focused construct so that we can use it as the foundation and do this again when we have more time. We are on a tight time frame here, and it's important that we get the information that we need. It's great to send out surveys, it's great to put Post-it notes up, but the bottom line is we don't have a lot of time. If we can get a really clear feeling of what it is that our townsfolk need to know in order for us to construct a budget that can be passed and meet the needs of students. That's got to be our focus. I don't think it can be, we had these meetings 2 or 3 years ago before we did the consolidation, and those meetings went on forever.
I've heard such great things about them from community members.
Well, I haven't, so I also want to look at people are gonna come with, I want the best for the kids, but I also know that I can't continue to live here if my taxes are gonna go up double digits every year. So you look at them and say, what, besides lower taxes, what is it that you need?
There's that, but also Kathy, I hear what you're saying and how important it is in the time, but I also am hearing over and over again that there's a lack of trust.
And we can't build that in one night. I want to
Yeah,
be
but-
perfectly clear. This is
No.
step one.
But
I
if
think
we
this is truly
spend it-
step one in multiple steps. Just by opening our minds and our time to try and hear feedback. I mean, that we've had wonderful participation here, and to promote
Kathy,
that as
you
well.
interrupted me and I wasn't done talking yet.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Thank
like
you.
you were done.
I was not done. So I think that that first step about building trust is incredibly important, that we have to include some time in the conversations. Because if we don't do that, I don't know that the budget is going to pass again from what we're hearing. I might be totally wrong, and I'm okay with being totally wrong. But I can tell you what the research is showing around this kind of conflict. We're in serious trouble right now.
I
The
think we'd all
research is showing
agree.
that we have to start with some kind of community building so that people know that we're going to take them seriously and we're going to answer their questions.
Kylie?
I hear you both, and I think you're both right. Like I said last week, I don't think, and I could be wrong, but I don't think our budget was voted down just because of the money,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And that, I think, plays into the lack of trust. So how do we structure these so they're efficient and we keep them, the guardrails, right? So that we're not straying off too much. But I think that people need to be heard, and I feel like an activity like the Post-its is a really efficient way because we're not necessarily interacting at that time, we're giving them that space to put it on the wall. And then, like you said, Kathy, we can do more of these,
Mhm.
and then they can know that they've been heard.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Because I've heard, like you mentioned, about it's not necessarily the dollar amount that people weren't willing to support. There were just other issues, so, keeping it tight, and just using that as a stepping stone for, okay, this is what we want to do this. At the same time, we are working within a very finite amount of time to make this work.
Oh, hold on 1 second. Liz?
I was just thinking about, I did share some ground rules that Julie Pettis had put together with Aaron that I think are pretty nice. If maybe you but so the 3 questions I looked up from Krista, they kind of aligned with this. They could be used really for any topic, but it was, what are our strengths? Because that's an important perspective. What are our barriers as a district, and what would you change? So that could kind of narrow down, the change, whether the change is um, how the spending is being allocated versus the change being we really need to find savings. So those three questions, I feel like could maybe help get us there.
Yeah. Sort of a SWOT analysis, if you will.
I have an idea that might bring together, Kathy, your suggestion and also some of the suggestions over here, which is if we really, the timing being of the essence, that we do the focus on this round is on budgets, but we also communicate to folks and we set up another round that's going to happen after the budget. So that way they know, everybody knows like, okay, we're gonna focus on budget right now, but we also know that you're going to give us space to do this again, whether that's like, I wasn't really planning on adding to our workload in the summer, but that there's some point in the very relatively near future where people will have a chance to have more of the open conversation.
Yeah, I think we
I think
can,
that's
that's
the
the
idea.
plan.
Yeah.
I think maybe we come up with a way to articulate that at the beginning of the session as we welcome community members into the space wherever the meeting happens, to say, this is our focus tonight, but we hear that you want to be heard and we want to hear you and set that stage. That, I think, I'm seeing a lot of that is our intent around
Yes.
the table, is to continue to connect with them.
I just wrote down, and this would be part of the survey, if we do a survey at the end, how did tonight go? Or today, or whatever, I'm seeing it as an evening, so I keep saying tonight. And, if we do this again, what topics would be of interest? And so we're collecting the data that would then be the pushing point for an additional meeting. And going back up to, how we're gonna run these meetings, I think we need to put in there something like, this is us working together, not against each other. Right? This is community building, but this is us working together. We're gonna solve this problem working together. We have to.
But we're not here to answer every question that you may have.
Yeah.
gosh, no.
So how do we, if they have specific questions, how do we set that aside in the time allotted? Because we're not gonna be able to answer them. What would be the best way?
Yeah.
Parking lot sticky.
Yeah.
For them to
Yeah.
put questions, like specific, more specific questions maybe, and maybe we find things there.
I like the Post-it idea as in like an entry ticket kind of a thing. And then perhaps as people come in, they become cognizant of what their issues are. You can do a turn and talk and they can discuss with their neighbors what their interests are. And then we can kind of come into it and kind of guide them through the process. So they have some time to formulate, otherwise people might just have that very first most important thing on their mind and not understand why or how, and when they talk to other folks, it could change or expand or something,
So
Yes.
I want to get just back to the ground rules idea. So we've got not taking names with comments, making sure that all the representatives for the town are there, setting expectations for the conversation. So we're focusing on budget, community building and collaboration, and that this is a starting point for future. And then we've got other ideas such as, we're here for hearing and collecting, making a safe space. So what are our other ideas for ground rules that I think the first three are really sort of nailed down, right? Not having names with comments, making sure all our reps are there, and then the setting of expectations. The other ones don't feel as nailed down to me. So,
Do we want to have a ground rule that says we're really not answering questions?
well, that would sort of live in the setting expectations. So, from tonight's notes, I'll start putting together sort of a draft, if you will, of what it could look like for how we say things.
I think it tends to be a big trigger for our community members and
Yeah.
connects to the policy governance issues that have arose. Is that us not answering all the time is just causing so much frustration. And when Chris and I were doing our partner match today, we were talking about different ways where you, as a board member, you can answer questions, but you're taking the information that is being recorded right now, that they're listening to right now, and you're just re-giving that information that you already know, that's already public, that's documented. Which sometimes is all people really are, they're not watching the 5-hour board meeting last week, like, just getting that information, is really helpful. So I would be inclined, I say that because I would be inclined, depending on how it comes up, there are some things that are pretty straightforward. No, we are not buying the budget in Munsell Avenue, like, things that some people might not know the information to because they haven't followed along, that kind of stuff.
And that ties back to the whole idea of that FAQ thing we had talked about, which, I think this community outreach section specifically will give us a lot of information about what might live there.
Yes.
So it's okay, Barb, if you don't feel, or if anybody doesn't feel comfortable answering a question or would like to pass that question along or say, I love that question, I'm gonna put it here and that'll end up answered. Even if you have to reach back out or whatever, phone a friend, right, to find the answer, exactly, yeah.
I'm wondering, Barb, you were saying that the turn and talk idea. I'm thinking that sometimes we have folks, I'm new, but it seems like sometimes folks have a lot to say online or in person. And I'm also mindful of not wanting to turn it into like people standing up and like airing worries and concerns and grievances, I think, in the way that you were talking about before. Like, we want it to be a dialogue or shared conversation. So does the ground rule need to be that this is really that our structure of the discussion, that it's a discussion, not a comment time? That needs to be different than what we have for our board comment, or that we're saying that, do we need to have time limits? Like,
Well, that's sort of, I was thinking about in the logistics of it, right? How are we gonna run the meeting? It doesn't have to be, we sit on one side of the table and they sit on another, right? It could be more of just like a floating, you're walking around and groups of people are, like, it doesn't have to be a really stagnant thing, so. We could put in a ground rule or an expectation like this is an open collaborative conversation, which sort of, to me, still sits in this number 3 ground rule. But just making that really clear.
I was kind of picturing it the same way you were.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, I keep picturing Holly Hall, because it's like.
Yeah,
a good-
that's I do too.
It's a good central place in Bristol, right? And if we're doing this Post-it note idea, then, you, me, we're walking around and if people are willing, we're engaging, like, hey, I just saw you put X, Y, and Z up. Would you be willing to talk to me more about that? Tell me a little bit more, like engaging in that dialogue with them and taking notes if we need to parking lot of questions, because we don't know the answer, but trying to get around the room so we can get to know our community members and they can also get to know us, and it becomes more interactive versus just walk in, put some sticky notes up and walk out.
Yeah.
oh, I was envisioning we were like sitting in like the group meetings where like everybody's sitting and chatting sort of like we are right now. I like this idea about the walking around though, as long as we can still. Like, how do we capture comments in those times? Many people. Am I getting to logistics again? We've
A
got a
little
very
bit.
clear order.
Yeah.
I think it's important for other people to hear other people's questions. Because that might give them information that they might not have previously had. Which I think is something that I'm finding a lot, is that a lot of people are just have pieces of information, not kind of the whole bucket. And so I was thinking more of like this kind of thing.
So everyone's hearing it. It
Yes,
seems efficient.
your questions are getting answered.
So maybe as an icebreaker, we're walking around and chatting and whatever, and then we get into sort of the more formal, everyone's sitting and.
Can we have food? I love doing meetings with food. It makes everybody feel happier.
Yeah, we'll have to figure out how to do that.
I might be wrong about this, but I suspect that the number of people who will actually participate in these things are gonna make an informal sort of conversation easy, as opposed to, and probably we should shy away from having some sort of formalized sort of meeting with I mean, have a formal meeting with 10 people in the room. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And I think, on this issue that Barb raised, I mean, I don't know, when I talk to people, I want to hear what their opinion is. And I think that, all of us sitting around the room, we know that there are certain, that we can express our opinions as long as we, say that this isn't necessarily the view of the board as a whole, but this is my opinion, this is what I think. And I think that people are much more, will feel much more satisfied than if we just sort of, they ask a question, say, we look at, okay, let me see what the board minutes said, and this is what the board minutes said, that's the answer. I think that that's off-putting. I think that that's one of the things that's kind of contributed to why we're at right now, is that this sense of us versus them, and it's,
It's also okay to not feel comfortable though, in putting your opinion out there, I guess is what my point
Well,
was, so.
yeah,
if
but
you're-
you can say, I mean, if there's somebody asks me a question, like, for example, the issue that Shauna raised. And I don't know about that.
Mhm.
I say, well, Shauna, I really don't know the answer to that question, whether or not it's a violation of Title X or Title Y or Title Z, I'll have to get back to you on it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And I think that I don't know, I try to, I really wonder how many people who say are upset about, how we provide, occupational therapy in a special ed program, use that as a springboard for voting against the budget.
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, I just haven't talked to those kinds of people.
Mhm.
I think that another reason why we are here, and, so Kathy kind of pointed this out, is that we have not done historically a good job of communicating what's great about the district. What's great about the exhibit in the gym right now. What's great about the Mount Abe softball team just beat CVU by 27-3. And so, I mean, people don't know what we're doing. I mean, the parents sort of do, but, aside from the parents, they just see an announcement that there's gonna be a vote, and that the budget, the tax burden is gonna go up 9.9%, whatever. And your immediate reaction is shock.
Mhm.
They don't have a connection to the district saying, oh, 9.9%, I know all these great things about the school, sounds okay to me, even though I don't want to pay 9.9%. But I think, I love these schools, they're great.
Mhm.
And we, it's on us that we haven't communicated that,
Mhm.
partly. It's also on the community that, historically, or at least in the last 6 or 7 years that I've been involved, community doesn't really, they don't, as Mike says, the community has done their part to some extent also.
Mhm.
And it has to be a collaboration between, the board, the administration, and the community.
Mhm.
And I know that, Krista, for all those years that and the energy and the time that she put into the community engagement committee, was remarkable. But I have a hard time seeing any results of the way we've done it
Mhm.
in the past.
Mhm.
So I think that what happens is someone gets the warning and says, okay, we have a $35 million budget. It's going to result in a 10% tax increase with no context. And so then they can bootstrap things that they hear about or maybe read about into creating a rationale for voting against the budget. For example, they say, my God, 9.9%, or I guess the person was what, 12% or whatever, 12% increase in our taxes. Hey, and look at that, they're also asking for an extra, $1 million to buy a building. So, and so the reason for voting against is not because they really understand the budget and what's going on, but they say, well, my God, they're also, buying a building.
Mhm.
And so they use that as the rationale. to justify their, and understandable concern about the costs going up and not being able to afford the, the taxes that are imposed by us and the state and the federal government and all that sort of thing.
So what would you suggest for this community engagement that might help address maybe a fraction of what
I
you're?
think we're at a point where it's, we're in a really tough spot because the kind of information that would encourage someone to vote for the budget is something that has to be, provided over time. And we have 2 months.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I frankly am not sure.
I think like as you were going through all that, I kept visualizing, you guys did the thing with the ladder with the big spaces and the ladder with the small spaces. You can't get up the ladder when the rooms are really far apart.
Mhm.
When they're closer together, you take smaller steps, you can get up the ladder. That's what I kept visualizing as you were talking about, and I think that's where we're at. We need to take a bunch of smaller steps. And while I realize initially it may not feel like, it may or may not, I don't know. I'm hopeful it feels like a good step in the right direction for our community. We are not going to answer everything that they need in this one meeting, and I'm hopeful if we can communicate that well and have our community members who might be here today help us communicate that well, who are listening online and who are here in front of us, that this is just step one, and we're gonna keep going up that ladder until we get to a place where hopefully we build back trust in the community and we're collaborative and we're working together, and it feels good.
Mhm.
Frankly, just to be silly about it, it feels good.
Just to piggyback on that, I agree, and I think there need to be different activities that happen afterwards, and hopefully we can engage some of the people who come to the meetings to like build a cohort and go out and maybe do door to door, or have some teas, or do something, or whatever, just little gatherings of their own to kind of at least get the information out there and, I think we want to have people show up to vote, and we want to have people come to the meeting, and I keep thinking, what I'm visualizing is the empty room where, because 2 or 3 or 10 people are gonna show up. How do we get more than that to come to this initial meeting, and how do we then get those people to work for us to get more people to come out and vote? I think that would be the small rungs.
Part of it's that contact. I mean, all of the people that I have spoken to from last Tuesday to this Tuesday that have had questions or talked about last week's meeting, I said, I want you to know, we are meeting next week, we're meeting tonight, whatever, we're gonna be hosting these. I would love to see you there.
And bring a friend.
Like, and just, I've been trying to like get the word out that this is coming, and I would love to see you there.
Nice.
Like, that message of, it's important enough for you to stop me on the street and ask me a question, or to stop me here and ask me a question. I would love to see you when we do this, because your voice is important.
Yeah.
This
Just those
also, it means,
Personal,
sorry.
Mm.
I'm finished.
just that personal connection. I think Brad speaks to that pretty well.
And also, we can't F this up, like, if we aren't welcoming and inclusive and responsive, then we totally F'd it up.
No pressure.
Yeah.
I mean,
So I
yes,
think we wanna, but we wanna be able to communicate afterwards, and I don't wanna like, I'm guessing that y'all might be there. But I wouldn't wanna put it on you to be the ones who then communicate back out to everybody how it went, of like, you've been doing such a nice job of starting to have us actually like post things on Front Porch Forum or whatever, but thinking about how do we communicate that out afterwards to communities of like, we had a great talk. This is how many people came. We'd love to hear from you. If you missed it, you can come to this one. Could we do something like that too? Is that still that's not part of the grad rules,
well, yeah, I know I have
logistics.
follow-up activities. I have a section for follow-up activities, which seems like people are leading into that, which is fine. So great, all good stuff. We have 3 ground rules. It sounds like we're not moving anywhere else with ground
I think
rules.
it's fine.
Okay.
I think
So-
Can you read them?
Yeah. So the 3 ground rules we have, we're not going to be taking any names, so it's an anonymous, safe space for gathering data. all representatives for the town will be at the meeting we set. And then we're gonna have some blurb that helps us set expectations for the conversation, how it's focused around budget, but also community building and collaboration to start the meeting off with.
I would add, be respectful of others and allow everyone to speak.
In the setting expectations.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And when you talk about town representatives, you're talking about school board members, you're not.
Correct.
So it'd be clear
Sorry,
to say
yes.
school board members.
School board members, yeah.
As the person who's usually not able to go to things, what do we do if we're trying to come up with a bunch of different times? Like, I know we all work different schedules. And I want to make sure that we're including as many people as possible. What do we like? How are we gonna make that?
Well,
work?
Bristol's probably the best off from getting at least 2 to 3 people.
Could we consider holding a meeting during the day for folks who are either at home with little ones or caretakers or retired?
Yeah, maybe have that as an option. All of our towns, if you can't make your town's evening hypothetical evening meeting, here's an opportunity during the day. Hope, you know, giving that as an option for everyone.
I mean, I generally can't ever do Saturdays too, but I could
Yeah.
see like a Saturday or where we have members from multiple towns come. But the other thing that sometimes I've seen other districts do is that they provide some form of child activity or child care to make it more accessible for families.
We're envisioning getting this done sometime between this week and next. Let's do one hurdle at a time, because I agree that over time, having food, like, food is great, having childcare is great, having, robust places to put a lot of information is great. And I want all those things too.
You're like, focus on the
But
crisis
yeah,
right
but
now.
let's
Okay.
get this one nailed down and build on it.
When we did them a few years back, I mean, I only went to the New Haven one. But the gym, I mean, there were 40 people there.
Yeah.
Moncton Gym seemed full.
And it was a Saturday, it was on the Saturday.
I think the one I went to was.
No, it wasn't an
It was an-
evening, it was a Saturday. When we were there.
Okay,
Because we couldn't make it to meetings.
so you can talk about times now, or do you want to do questions first? We don't have any questions out of right now.
I like the start
Simple.
that Liz
Yeah.
had for questions.
Yeah.
And the ones that, I explained this to Erin earlier, but once upon a time, I was sent out with a team to go to Charleston, South Carolina, shortly after the Mother Emanuel shootings, and that we were supposed to help talk to the members of the school community who are profoundly divided by race, and we were trying to do an equity audit. And we basically had 3 questions, because that was an incredibly difficult and fraught context, but the questions were basically the same as what Liz said. It was basically like, what are you really proud of with your district? What do you love about your district? And then what are you concerned about? And then what do you want us to know? Or like, what's not being addressed right now? Like those 3 seem to hit it, and I think it's the same thing that Liz was talking about. Just a little bit less with the language of a SWOT analysis.
Yeah.
But this is where I get into the weeds,
Mhm.
because we have to like test out our questions 5 million times before we ask anybody.
Mhm.
What information would cause you to vote yes on the budget?
I know, I'm thinking very,
Oh,
very
duh.
direct.
That's just hard.
I mean, I think those questions are great. I think we should do those questions too, but like when you get to the meat of
If
it.
we're gonna examine the ends policy, I think.
Why did you vote no, or what would make you vote yes? Like, that's really what we want to know right now, right?
And what other questions do you have
Yeah,
before voting?
to feel comfortable voting. Yeah.
I think you're all gonna be comfortable voting, we want them to be comfortable.
Yeah,
voting
yeah,
yes.
yeah, voting for the-
Yeah, vote yes.
Is that our exit ticket? As you're leaving? So I think that would help if we have the conversation, and as people are leaving, we ask them. What was your question? again? What information do you need to be able to vote yes?
Yeah.
What would it take for you to vote yes?
Yeah, what information? Just leave it at that, because it could be an answer, it
Give them
could be.
a note card or something.
could be a-
Mhm. A sticky note, I'm gonna invest in sticky note stock.
That
Will
feels
people
like-
think that's confidential enough?
We can do the survey too. Oh, no.
I'm just wondering if that's not like one of the primary questions.
Yeah.
Not an exit ticket question.
But what I'm worried about is that I think that it may change during our conversation. So I wanna make
So
sure
we're
we
just
get the right info.
re-asking.
Yeah,
Should maybe we have our conversations where people already are gonna go as opposed to inviting them someplace?
Mhm.
you mean like snaps?
Like the transfer station.
Yeah, we could all meet at the transfer station.
Yeah, we meet at the transfer station
I'm gonna
Or-
need snaps.
or, you know, at, front of Shaw's
Mhm.
or, at, you know, Martin's
Mhm.
or it's at school.
It's hard to get IT there, though.
At the transfer station is their service.
But we could also, if needed to, just make this an in-person meeting for this time. If we needed to, which would cut down on
Yeah.
a lot of
especially-
logistics.
Yeah, especially if we have an option for an afternoon. And if, you know, people. I mean, I'm in Bristol oftentimes, feels like more than in Starkboro some days, but, you know, if I have a schedule conflict, you know, me being not me as a school board member, but, you know, resident, you know, I have whatever on this evening. But you know what, hey, I can go to the New Haven or the Moncton meeting or whatever. It's the same information. It's just possibly, you know, different location and different faces.
Mhm.
I think it's important to encourage, I mean, we're gonna get more people to show up if we can, you know, put that message out there too and encourage people like,
Mhm.
you know. Well, what if we said, what if all of, we talked about not doing them all on the same date and time. So what if they're all in different date and times? And the message is you don't have to go to your town's meeting. Yep. You can go to any of the meetings. Yep.
The only hesitation I have, I like that idea of sharing us. The only hesitation I had was we've had a lot of community members say, we'd like to know who our reps are.
Sure.
And I think like we haven't really established that quite yet. I don't know if maybe this one we're doing that or if it's another one where we're doing that individualized work, but.
I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
That might be a internal priority
Mhm.
for the public, right? Like this person has that desire, so, and they live in New Haven, so they're gonna prioritize coming to
Going to
Kathy and I.
Yeah.
This person, oh, that doesn't matter, I just
Yeah.
want my voice heard, and I can go Tuesday night, I can't go Wednesday night, so I'm gonna go to Bristol.
Right, or
Like,
like,
that might be an internal.
yeah, it could be, you know, we'll toss out, you know, Alan Quintner can't come to Starksboro, but Alan knows, you know, Steve and Brad and I, so, you know, if it works better for him to do.
So,
Moncton, then he
so
will.
you weren't talking about school board members sharing dates. You were talking about community members.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
my misunderstanding.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should
No,
make it a
no, it's
little bit
fine.
more clear.
That's the way I
Yeah.
interpreted it as well.
No,
Liz?
Although you're welcome in New Haven anytime. you-
one's good.
I just want to say I've enjoyed going to all the towns and all of their meetings. So it sounds like we're trying to have 4 meetings. And it sounds like, you know, and I do think that if we can't make it to our night somewhere, if we could go to another town, I think that's still valuable. Just prioritizing, hopefully getting to your town. And I just want to be sure that whatever simple questions we're asking, that we also make those available in a Google survey that can be put out on Facebook and Front Porch Forum and shared out and about. So that it's, because I think it makes a lot of sense to, with what we sound like we're putting together. I don't know that making it in person and virtual at the same time makes sense. Unless we did like an only virtual or only in-person meetings, and add a 5th one that way, but that's really hard too with the breakout groups. So as long as, I think in person without trying to especially like small groups leaning and talking towards each other, that's really difficult to get on Zoom. So maybe the in-persons are just in person, but we have a survey with those same, like some core questions that also goes out, spread widely to our community members who can't make it. And hopefully that'll expand our reach a little bit. Yeah.
Thanks, Liz.
Do
Yeah,
we,
sorry, Kristen?
I also think, not doing a virtual meeting for this one, if we do a Zoom, you kind of lose the anonymity piece. So there's that.
Okay.
Yes and no, because, we're gonna see people in person, so the anonymity on Zoom, we just wouldn't be able to report it, right? But I think the idea of 5, I want to propose 5 meetings, so we have one in each town. And then we have one, I was actually wondering if we want to do one online. Anybody else here have to teach online? Okay, yeah, it's not very easy for me to get people to talk, but I'm like, it might be a way that we can make sure as many people as possible can. So I'd like to say, like, if we do one at Zoom, or we make sure that we have one during the day, just to maximize that we're not leaving anybody out who really wants to share. So I don't know if that's 4 or 5. We got away from the questions again.
No, it's okay. Let's just stay in logistics. How are other people feeling about one meeting per town, time of day? What feels good?
My gut says evening.
Mine too.
Y'all are killing me. I don't know how my money went
Saturdays with lacrosse and baseball and yard sales. I think it's a really hard time of year to do a Saturday.
Mhm.
But if we do them in evenings, we're asking for families to be able to come again for an event. And it means that somebody like me would not be able to go. So like, if we want to do evenings, then I feel like if we're only gonna do evenings, then we have to be able to provide like childcare. Otherwise, we're being too exclusive.
And there are folks that don't like to drive in the evenings as well.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, maybe I missed it. Why can't we open them up to Zoom as well?
We can. There isn't a limitation in that. It's just logistics wise, making sure that whatever community space we choose to host it in has Wi-Fi that can support that, like Brad talking about being at the transfer station, for example. Might not be a feasible place to have a Zoom meeting also.
I know, well, like, so our select boards, they record their meetings, right?
Mhm.
I know the Moncton Town Hall is big enough as a great meeting place. I don't know about the other towns.
I'm nervous about the recording and the Zoom because of folks really wanting to feel that it's a comfortable space where, you know, that they're not going to be like necessarily recorded or shared elsewhere. And it's so easy to record on Zoom, even if you're not.
Oh, even if we're not recording it.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Justin. Thank you, Meg.
I probably should have asked this like an hour ago. What's the time frame that we're thinking that the meeting is going to be held? Because maybe that would dictate the day of the week, a weekend, the evening, to everybody's point. Are we thinking, is it all dictated based on how many people come and based on how long we're giving the community members to talk and how many questions? Yeah, just a thought.
Yeah, I think that's where we're at, is trying to figure out what time of day feels like we can feasibly do and do well this time around. And evenings have seemed to be lean towards just for ourselves, but
Please let us do one during. I think I'm just gonna stick to it, but I think it's important that we have them at different times.
Could anybody else here do during the day? Was thinking you can do during the day.
Yeah, when you're done with this.
I can do during the day.
I know I can't do during the day, but
and maybe the during the day one is the Zoom one.
I could maybe if it's a Zoom.
Mhm.
Wait, how many could do it during the day? Like, okay,
Yeah, Steve,
So-
your hand up.
could we do something like that and try to do it in a common public space like a library or a town hall?
I think it's more of a problem for working people
Yeah.
doing it during the day,
Mhm.
not us.
Oh, no, I know, but if we have 3 night sessions, we have lots of options for working folks. Oh, I see what you're saying. The library, we could reserve space though, right? Are you talking about the logistics of having space for?
No, 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 no.
Or for people
Space.
being able to
I'm
attend?
talking about people being, I think there's issues with people being able to attend no matter what time that you do it.
Yes,
Yeah.
but if we
So-
only do them at the same time, we're really narrowing. our
Yeah, I mean,
rules.
to Kristen's point, if you're giving people options to attend a different town, then you can't really take advantage of that if you don't vary the times.
Yeah, I suppose.
Okay,
But you might disadvantage Bristol if you did it at noon
Right.
versus,
Why not?
That's why I'm thinking we do 5, we can do 4 at night when most people can come, and we do a 5th either in person during the day, or we do a 5th online, and I'm volunteering myself to do more than one, because if I'm suggesting we do extras, I will participate in extras. You're so excited about that.
okay, so if we're gonna do, each town is gonna do their own, and it's gonna be, it sounds like an evening time. People need to sort of put their heads together about what evenings work and how they can fit that in between now and the 14th.
Now on the 14th?
That's what we were sort of envisioning, yeah.
maybe we do a 5th meeting that's district wide.
Well, that's sort of
Yeah.
what I was thinking about, that 5th meeting being during the day. It sounds like we're gonna have a diverse set of reps available for that. And just open it up to whomever.
So I was thinking that we were going to meet next week and set the time. Because to think that we're gonna get the notice out to everybody, let everybody know when we're gonna be available between now and next week. There's not enough lead time for
So are
that.
people thinking after the 14th then?
What did we say
Or
now
after
till the 17th? And
Yeah.
giving all of next week as
To
a
get notice out?
opening.
And then we would try to get one out on Thursday, like the 9th. It'd be pretty fast, but we could try to do one right off the bat, but then that could inform our meeting on the 14th.
Today is already the 7th. So if we get the word out tomorrow, I don't see that as being feasible.
If some of these meetings happen after the 14th, what impact does that have on the board's preparedness to set a date on the 14th?
That was sort of the idea, yeah, that we could get something set up to help us get a date.
Why don't we try to get the survey out? Because we can do that. Like, we can design a really simple survey that has the the basically our more basic, maybe it's 4 questions, maybe it's fewer, but it's what do you need to know, what needs to change, or, to vote yes. So that way we can at least start having some info to inform us on the 14th, and then we as well.
I think. I mean, do we have to have the forums to make a date? I'm not feeling prepared to set a date today, obviously, but next week,
Mhm.
knowing that we're gonna have the information to help us set a target.
Mhm.
I mean, we don't have to have the target and the date at the same time, do we?
For the next budget vote you're talking about? No, yeah. It'd be helpful if we did, that way we could set mornings and things like that, but.
That's the only piece that the target drives is being able to finish the warning and actually do engage in the process to set that date and move that forward.
Yeah, we might want to work that conversation backwards from the last possible,
Date of a vote.
yeah.
Mhm.
I guess to that end, asked Jennifer to connect with town clerks to explore late May, early June options and what's not gonna work. So she looked at May 28th, June 4th, June 11th, just sort of sticking with Tuesdays. May 28th isn't an option. June 4th and 11th are.
Justin?
Yeah, I was just gonna repeat what Steve had said and work backwards from a date. And to Liz's point about setting a target tonight, I know we can't, but it would be nice to know, like, could we have the town vote or could we have the budget vote on the 18th? The warning happens on the 11th or the 4th, and then, could we potentially have this community meeting in place of the board meeting on the 14th at all the respective towns? And that would give us enough time to go through all the logistics. So then that way, we as the board, we're not burdened by an additional meeting on top of all the other additional meetings.
You're talking about May 14th for the community meeting?
Yeah, because that would give us a week-ish. I mean, less than a week. I don't know what the logistics is with getting a public space, but I would imagine for all of us, we're already planning on having that time blocked off with family and stuff like that we're away. It would kind of make it easy to schedule.
I like that idea.
Yeah, me too.
Can I follow up just real quick with Patrick? So if we do, you said there was like the sort of second or third week of June was available.
So, yeah, we looked at May 28th, June 4th, and June
First
11th.
or second, so
And those first or second, the third, and just for the reference, the third Tuesday is after school's out of session.
Yeah.
so
Just
and
look at
then I mean, it sounded like part of the rationale for the board postponing the date was to make sure we had time for like absentee ballots and things like that last time, right? So what's the timeline for a realistic warning before, say, the 4th of June? To get that to the public so that absentee ballots could be requested so that they could get back.
I'd have to go back and look. I didn't come tonight prepared for conversations about setting a date because that wasn't a topic.
Yeah.
I'm trying to recall where that landed last time.
Well, we wanted to do it on the 28th and we pushed it off to the 16th. Because the 28th wasn't enough time from 2 meetings before that,
That sounds right.
Yeah.
so
So like almost 3 or 4 weeks.
it was like, 3 or 4 weeks.
Because then we're like there already.
Yeah, that's
Right, so that
why I thought working backwards might make sense.
exactly, that's why I want to follow up on that. Exactly, because like even pushing what we were planning on the 14th back starts to feel like maybe now we're butting up into whatever concerns we already expressed about absentee ballots. So again, this idea of being very narrow, very focused, as quick as we can, comes into play. Unless we're gonna do something like push it beyond when school's in session or something. It feels like that has some real consequences too.
Well, also if it doesn't pass again,
Yeah, exactly.
but I guess at that point, we're already too late anyway. If we just talk theoretically about voting on the 11th. We go back 4 weeks before that. That's the 21st.
Yeah. 4 weeks before the 11th is 14th.
Which is next week.
Which is
Yeah,
saying
you're
that
right. Yeah.
we would need a target and
And the
to warn
warnings
it
on- yeah.
by next Tuesday,
Yeah.
if we're gonna hold the vote on the 11th.
Wow. How about if we look at the shoot for the 18th? Did we ask about the 18th?
We didn't ask about the 18th.
Okay.
Is Juneteenth a holiday here as well as a national holiday? The 19th?
Some companies recognize and some don't. Sometimes it's a voting holiday, so it's not widely observed.
Okay.
Is being in and out of, or out of school an issue? I heard you mention school would be out.
It's only an issue in terms of availability of people to vote. When at least my experience has been when summer comes, people scatter. And summer will be here as of Friday the 14th. In terms of students' last day of school.
Then we would have to do a big push for absentee ballots. Yeah.
And last time, 12% of the electorate voted.
So if we're trying to make community meetings, I am a little bit nervous about waiting until the 14th to have all that done, but that's sort of where I know.
Well, we can, I think we can still set the date for the 11th. Which, on the 14th. Like, we could still agree to set the date.
That, my concern is that if we do it on the 14th, we won't have actually done any of the community input that we're looking
I
for.
understand, yeah, I understand.
Then,
Let me finish.
okay,
All we're doing is setting the date. Probably then. But you actually have to send the warning out on the 14th?
Yeah, it's not officially warned until the actual warning, which has the statutorily required language, which includes the budget figure in it, is publicly warned.
and
Yeah,
how long
that's
is-
gotta go out.
how
By
far
statute,
in advance?
because this is a revote. I don't think the statute differentiates a re-revote. I think anything more than after the first one, that's sort of uncharted territory. So I think it all applies. I believe it's 7 days from the time you warn it to when the budget can be voted on. So it recognizing you're past this window when you like to be approving budgets, they dramatically decrease the window of time that you have. We didn't choose to take that really expedited path last time because we wanted to create the space for absentee ballots and getting information out, et cetera. But by law, you can warn it 7 days before you vote on it, and then you'd have to have an informational session between basically when you warn it, and when you vote on it, usually within a couple of days of the vote.
Then that sounds like we could set the date and have it on the 11th, because then we wouldn't have to warn it on the 14th.
The question
Well,
is
the
more
issue-
about getting information out. Yeah.
It's the absentee ballots is the pitch, because if you wanna warn it, if you wanna put an absentee ballot out and you want 4 weeks to do that, you're gonna have to have the information. Without,
The two things that require the most time are giving advance notice for the absentee ballots, and if you wanted to do a flyer or some sort of informational like we have for the other two, sending that to the printer and getting it in the mail and getting it out takes a week-ish.
Erin, what do we do when there's a question in the audience?
We wait for the next public comment section. Sorry.
So it seems like the 18th would be the best shot, and we could have the meeting next week, we could gather information if we're gonna meet with folks next week. And we'll be within that window, and we can't fool ourselves to believe that even if it was on the 11th, that we'd be able to, and it was voted down. We'd be able to put together another budget, get it out there and follow all the state statutes, and it's not realistic, so.
It is realistic, whether it's an approach you wanted to take. You only need
Not an
7
approach,
days.
I know, but it's not an approach anybody should take, it's just throw it out there for 7 days. So,
it worked in Virginia.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Virginia's did that twice.
Okay. So let's say theoretically, we're looking between the 11th and 18th, and theoretically, we'll set that date on the 14th of May. When our community meetings happening.
My sense would be immediately following that. I mean, I don't, I mean,
So after the
I mean,
14th.
if we can get it before the 14th, I don't think there's any harm in that. If we think that we can get enough information to the public that we can schedule a date, like if all the logistics come into play and we can do it this Friday
Maybe we
or this weekend, like, I don't think it has to be necessarily all after or all before, but sometime in the next, give it 3 days for us to figure things out, and then sometime in that next 7 to 10 days, it feels like it has to be there.
Okay.
Because otherwise you don't get that input by the time we need to set the target.
Maybe we need to divide it out by towns real quick. And choose a date for each town.
Yeah.
And I could see, as our window's so short, that if you had like the early shift at one town and a later shift in another town, you could do like, you could have like 2 on a Wednesday or whatever, like maybe one's like at 5 and one starts at 7.
Mhm.
So what's our target now for getting these meetings done?
As soon as possible.
Sometime between now and right after the 14th.
And what was wrong with doing it on the 14th?
Well, we had set a target for Patrick for answering a lot of questions that we have.
Yeah.
And there are other things that are gonna live on that agenda as well, so
Yeah.
I would like to hold the space we said we'd hold for that.
For clarification, are you putting on that agenda that we need to set the target for Patrick?
Well, we will now. We, oh, for the budget.
Yeah, because my concern.
budget number?
Yeah, like
Hmm.
the percent or the number, whatever direction we take. My concern would be if we have two forums with our communities on between now and the 14th, and we haven't heard from the other two, I would not personally feel comfortable
Right.
weighing in and giving a new target without hearing from all of our communities.
It sounds like right now we were only leading towards setting the date.
I just wanted to
Yeah,
clarify that it
yeah.
wouldn't be an agenda item to set the target as well on the 14th, or what your intent was. I was just checking.
As of right now, no, it'd just be the date that we've talked about, we feel comfortable with.
I
Okay,
just,
thank you.
can I just to throw out, and I understand the trepidation, like, just logistically, like, if we then wait. Then the next meeting, whatever meeting we have to have as is when we share the stuff back to Patrick. And then Patrick needs time to set the budget before it comes back to us. If I'm following correctly.
Yeah, there's gotta be a feedback loop.
Right, is that a loop? So if we don't do something soon, and we would push past the 14th, then maybe the next Tuesday's the 21st. And at that point, we're just telling Patrick what we've heard, which means that we don't hear from him till the 28th. Maybe we can start doing things that aren't a week apart, but you see the problem. And now we're already at the deadline before we've even heard the first budget from Patrick that we're willing to consider. And so that feels problematic.
Time is not on our side.
Justin, so how long do we think, how will we notify the community that we're gonna have these forums, and how long do we think we need to share like, how far in advance to get enough people there? Like, could we do it in 2 days, 3 days, 4 days?
It seems like setting at the very least a date would help get people, would they know that this is when we're voting on the budget and that we want their input as fast as possible, that would help.
We could put something in Front Porch Forum tomorrow with just the dates and then follow those up, with the towns and the dates. And then follow those up with really pointed flyers about, here's where we're meeting and that kind of stuff. But, I think that's okay. But that's what I sort of envision. If we can at least get a date, then we can move pretty quickly from there.
I just sent a message to Jennifer to see what action can town clerks get started if they only have a date and don't actually have a warning.
Mhm.
I don't know the answer to that.
Justin?
Are we trying to do too much? To Mike's point, if we, if people are meeting after the 14th and then we're getting the information back to Patrick, it seems like that's even a tighter timeline. Do we have a pretty jam-packed agenda for next Tuesday, Aaron? Looking on just at a brief glance, like, are we able to hold a bigger space for public comment next Tuesday to get more information on top of the little Google survey that we had answered for Patrick? Or is that too much?
I don't know yet, but that's a great question, Justin. Let's hear from Liz, and then I want to talk about what you just said.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about what he just said as well, for the 14th, if that could be our, we just commit to a long night and we get some information, and then after because it's some great information that we were looking for that we thought would be valuable for this process. And then after that, hold some open community comments and have it be, I'd really like to figure out what our questions are, and I'd like them to be as limited as possible in terms of number. And then at the beginning of that, So, because tomorrow we could put out dates, but Tuesdays is kind of an expected time frame. So if that was our Zoom open to everybody meeting, and it could also be re-announced then when our in-persons are. So if the 14th was information sharing, 3 pointed questions, or 4, and then gathering whatever input is reasonable before the 21st, processing the information we get between the 14th and the 21st, and sharing that back. And then I think, you know, the way that our community is going to trust us to hear them and share the information that we gathered well on the 21st. I think that we would just, you know, I think for me, it would be a trust that what we're presented on the 28th is something that we could know that we put good input into and move forward with how to reach the target on the 28th. So on the 21st, we give the target. On the 28th, we receive how to get there. And that's it. We'd have to go out. That would be the time to send out the wording. Everything would follow the 28th. And I think 18th is going to have to be, feels like it might have to be the voting day, and really just encouraging, you don't even have to absentee ballot. You can just you can go to your town clerk and vote in person there. So it's still lots of in-person voting can happen in the following 3 weeks. You just go when it's convenient for you, when the town offices are open. And I know that's different in every town, but that would give 3 weeks for people to show up and do it when they can. And I don't know, I guess that's what I'm looking at. But if tonight we knew the questions, we could put the Google survey out this week. And if along with the Google survey, it says we'll be having a Zoom on the 14th and a town, I don't know. So can we decide on the questions tonight? And can we decide on, I don't know if it's possible without doing a little research to see what's available, but can we decide on the nights and where our town meetings would be? And I just think it's a lot easier if we don't try to get them on Zoom. I just think it's easier because there's a lot of technology that would be relying. It's more logistics, more to figure out. And I guess that's the time. That's what I'm seeing for a timeline.
Thanks, Liz. Brad?
I think we're trying to get stick a square peg into a round hole. Is there any reason why we can't just have the community meetings next Monday? Do them all next Monday?
It's helpful to offer more than one day to maximize participation. But sure.
No, there is.
Yeah, I mean, it gets back to the square peg and round hole.
It's also logistics, it's trying to make sure we have the space available.
Could we try doing, during the day on the 10th or the 14th?
So,
Not at the transfer station?
well, let's start with the 13th is what you suggested, Brad.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we could do the town ones on Monday and then do the day one on Tuesday.
On a different day. How are people feeling about that?
I feel good about that. It doesn't allow people to go to different towns, but
But let's, this is a starting point and we'll build from here. Grand vision, but let's, yeah.
I mean, after having this conversation for
An
a
hour
long
and a half.
time now.
Yeah.
It seems we're gonna find,
Okay,
it's not gonna be perfect.
okay, so May 13th. Time,
I can't make it.
We can make a daytime one, right?
we can make it-
Yeah, we can
We can handle it.
do Monday.
I'm
Is that-
leading the career center negotiations.
Oh, you sure you don't want to join us?
Does it feel comfortable for you not being there, Steve? Or would you rather? Be there?
I think I would like to be there.
Okay.
I'm not gonna be there. Sick of them.
Did y'all do the 15th?
Years.
Do the Wednesday? Why do I have my calendar board training on Wednesday the 15th? That's not for here, right?
No.
Okay, I don't know why.
Okay.
What are people's thoughts on a Sunday night? Like maybe some are Sunday night, some are Monday night.
Well, Mother's Day is the 12th.
Oh, thank you.
I'm fine.
My calendar doesn't tell me that.
But my calendar does, that's why.
So which towns could do the 13th though?
New Haven.
New Haven,
I could, I don't know. if that's
Moncton,
still-
Justin, could you?
Okay.
Monday, the
Good.
13th,
We could probably
Possibly.
make it work.
possibly.
Just had a quick question. I
Yeah.
know they have a facility use application in Moncton. Can we bypass that? How do we? Or do we need to go
For
through?
the school,
Well, for the town
Or-
hall.
I could call in tomorrow.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, we gotta check and make sure we can meet wherever we're planning on meeting.
So
well,
maybe-
we can certainly make any school available if a preferred space in the
Okay.
town's not.
So if we can't get that, we have a little time to go
Back
back.
then, yeah. Okay, so New Haven can,
People are used to meeting at Rome.
Moncton can,
Steve, what does Friday or Wednesday look like for you? Did either of those two dates work? So Friday the 17th or Wednesday?
Well, we're trying to.
With the hope to have it before the 14th.
Oh, right. Yeah,
You wanna do it
sorry.
on the tenth?
That's what I meant. Yeah.
The tenth or the eleventh?
Yeah.
And I could meet. If it was a midday meeting on the 14th, I just can't do it in the evening on the 13th.
So why don't we do it midday on the 14th?
okay, so Starksboro, you're looking at midday on the 14th.
I'm sick.
This is a recorded meeting.
Or I can see if I can work from home that day. That might work.
So no to the 14th or yes to the 14th?
I'll make it work.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Starksboro, 5:14, Bristol, what are we doing?
I'll go on the 13th.
I'll make it
13th?
work.
Yeah. Who else is in?
So if we're gonna do it,
Liz, are you good for the Monday, the 13th? Yes, okay.
if we're gonna do it during the day,
Oh.
where are we gonna meet? We're not gonna do it in the gym. Schools can be occupied.
That's true.
Isn't there a meeting house there on Main Drive? The old meeting house?
The firehouse or whatever.
Is-
Or what if we did it
Is
at
the
the,
gym used for, after school?
Yeah.
ELP, yeah, I think so.
I don't know what size crowd you'd
How about
expect
the library?
midday, but
Yeah.
it might be worth reaching out to Adora to see.
Yeah, okay.
There may be a room that gets less use that could be available, and if like a classroom size space would accommodate the group, you think,
Right,
there may be some options.
right.
So midday for Starksboro, what does that mean?
3:00.
3?
Would 3 work? for you?
Sure.
Steve, would 3 work?
Yeah,
New Haven, what time would you like to hold yours?
6:30.
3:00 is spot on dismissal time.
I was gonna say-
I might recommend adjusting that a little bit.
Unless
later.
you find an alternative
Right,
space.
right.
Right.
Probably a little bit later, 3:30.
3:30.
If it might be at the school.
3:30, okay. Moncton, what are you thinking for time?
what do you wanna do? Kind
6:30?
6:30?
Well, if we keep them all consistent, then they'll all know.
Yeah.
And Bristol, are we okay with 6:30?
3.5 hours.
Did you say consistent or inconsistent?
Consistent.
Oh, then yeah, then 6:30. I was thinking she was trying to stagger them.
Yeah, 6:30.
Okay. Okay, so Moncton, the 13th, 6:30, Bristol, the 13th, 6:30, New Haven, the 13th at 6:30, and Starksboro, the 14th at 3:30.
Aaron, I thought of a ground rule.
What's?
Do we want to set of length of time
Yeah.
that these meetings
Well, we're
are?
gonna need to for start point.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a ground rule as much as it just is, it's from this time to this time.
Right.
But yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
6:30 to 8.
Well, we wouldn't be, yeah.
6:30 to 8 p.m.
If we say 6:30 to 8, and then we have the flexibility to extend it.
So that would
The
mean-
folks are there and they're talking.
Starksboro 3:30 to 5.
Mhm.
Okay.
Starksboro wouldn't have a lot of room to extend us all.
No.
Yeah.
And people will get angry.
That too,
Including the board members.
yeah, because we have to
Okay.
come here next.
And then we will reach out to Occupy Space.
Texted him.
Okay.
I don't know where we want to be.
Yeah.
Bristol.
Where do we want to be, Bristol? I don't know.
Be
So-
in the gym or at Holly Hall.
Yeah. Do we do Holly Hall?
Is Holly call it?
There's also Howden Hall, which
Yes.
is more
Yeah.
a meeting, it feels like a
That's
meeting.
We gotta get a
Holly
little
Hall's is the-
Yeah, so it's in the Haven Town Hall.
Are we both? Holly Hall's behind them.
Okay.
Well, I can see that there's location there, it'll depend on the format, right? Like, if we have people wanting to like gather around tables, we should be in a space that has like tables and chairs easily like set up.
Holly Hall has, you can get both those things, I
Oh.
think, so you should be fine, at least chairs.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah,
about
lots of
tables,
chairs.
but we could. yeah,
So we
there's
can set
lots of
that up.
chairs in Holly Hall, yeah.
With TV access.
Okay, so New Haven, you're thinking at
Town
where?
Hall.
Town Hall. Starksboro, you're thinking either the, the classroom at Robinson.
Talk to hit the door about that.
Okay. Bristol, we're thinking Holly. And Moncton.
Town Hall.
Town hall.
Okay, and one of you from each of those towns designate yourself to be the person who does that legwork, please.
I got it.
Okay, and then just
I don't have it.
email me. Liz,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, is email you, everybody check that out tomorrow. I don't know which Mondays the select board meets at the town hall. They
I
meet
don't
on Mondays, right?
would you be able to do that?
Yes, I will, and I will email you tomorrow to confirm or say that we need to find something else. All right?
Wonderful.
Checking on Holly Hall.
Liz is checking.
Okay,
Okay.
delegate our French porch.
Your FPF.
Our
So-
FPF people, and I'm just resonating with Brad talking about that personal approach.
Mhm.
And so using that personal approach through front porch.
Mhm. I would love to not author every single one.
Right. We're
You
on
do
it.
one, then I'll do one a couple days later. so
Well, I
that
have the login
Mhm.
for the
It is tied to one person's name,
district one.
Okay, but I can do it as a personal.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
so even if you write it though, it's gonna show up as
But I
Ashley.
have- But Jenny.
No, I'm not gonna write it. I'm gonna write this Kathy Apgar.
From your account.
Right,
your
for my
account.
account. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I just, asked if the facilities were taken and the 13th is out.
For-
For the town hall.
Okay.
So we would need an alternate site.
For Moncton.
You could
The gym.
check in on Moncton Gym.
School, I mean, whether, I don't know specifically the gym, but
Yeah.
space can be made available.
Right, just came back.
Okay, so we're gonna remove the town hall and it'll be moved in, maybe MCS.
So do we have to what do we have to do to get those facilities?
You just reach out to someone in the front office,
Okay,
admin assistants can help you work through that process.
okay.
I can call. I talk to them a lot.
All right, so we have dates, we have times, we have tentative location. So the only thing we don't really have is our questions really nailed down. We have a couple general things that we've put together.
Wait, are we doing one during the day? I'm so sorry. I feel like I missed.
Oh, yeah, yes, but we were thinking maybe after the 14th.
We
So we
can,
do or maybe it's pushed up closer.
we can do the 14th. During the day on the 14th, so that
Mhm.
we can have that information.
Mhm.
Like, I'd be happy to do that. Because I got so excited. I got ahead of myself and I talked to the Bristol librarian today to be like, if we did want to have it, could we have it, what days? So I think they're available, but I could confirm. We want to do it there.
Okay,
I'm saying this to a recording, so I hope the library.
Well, I also wondered too, like Justin made a good suggestion that we just have that sort of open space here, maybe after but I get your point about wanting to have one that's during the day.
Well, it's 3:30.
Oh,
Right, but
Starts
like an
early.
online one where you could, yeah, unless we're being really, like, here's one where you could go, that's more during the day. Is what
Yeah,
you're saying.
we're almost, when people are starting to head home, and we're doing ours, so really middle of the day.
Anybody who wants to join me on Tuesday? The 14th?
What time?
I usually get my daughter to separate from my body at the door of preschool by 9, because that's the hard cutoff. So I can generally be someplace.
I
by
can do it with
9:30.
you.
Okay, great,
I can also be available for that one.
awesome.
We just need you're envisioning that's a Zoom though.
Oh, shoot, no, I was envisioning it was in person at the library, but I can do it on Zoom instead if you'd like.
I was confused by your earlier, like having this be the one that's on.
Yeah,
Zoom.
I totally lost the thread of what's on Zoom and what's in
Yeah.
person.
I think we're all in person except for the one that you're talking about now.
Okay.
Can we do both? Have it Zoom from that library? No.
You can, but so I guess this is where I'm getting confused, is that we have our 4 towns nailed down. Maybe this time we do have one that's sort of during the day. It's not totally during the day, but how are people feeling about having a jumble of board members from different, it doesn't matter, like a jumble of board members meet at a daytime? Is that feeling like something people are on board with? And yes, go ahead.
I'm
With-
on board with it, I just can't do it.
Right, okay,
Let's try it, and then we
Okay.
get the feedback. We're gonna get feedback from all of this.
Okay.
Of what times work.
okay, so it's
Yeah,
in
don't hold
person.
One when we're all bringing our kids home. Just what we're doing.
If you want. And you feel like it's gonna make the most sense for us to also do it on Zoom, we can do in person and have the Zoom going. at the
Well,
same
I don't think it does make the most sense to have Zoom is sort of where I'm leaning towards, so, yeah, Brad.
I think each town can decide how they want to do it, but I think having people come to schools is a good idea.
Mhm.
I mean, the library is lovely, but what gets back to one of our problems is people don't come to our schools, so.
On the one on Tuesday, I wouldn't want to try to grab school space during the day when kids are there. Also, I feel like that'd be hard on, getting everybody like with your ID cleared to get in the building. But how about on Tuesday, the 14th from 10 to 11:30? That way we aren't like hitting the end of the day, kids coming out.
Mhm.
Do we post anywhere besides Front Porch Forum? I read Front Porch Forum and I don't use Facebook anymore, but it seems to me that there's some sort of social media communication energy.
There is, it's an MAUSD Facebook account.
We also could use the Edison Independent if you got them now, you could have it out for Monday's edition.
What about the robocalls? We use those?
That's a great idea.
It only reaches families, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Ooh.
Well, I mean, you have an email blast. sometimes.
Yeah, you could, which still only goes out to families,
Right.
but you could craft a message that we could send out.
The robocalls are great. Yes, it calls like all the phone numbers.
Wait, if you have, can we also reach out? Can teachers and staff come to these too?
Yeah.
Okay, then is there a way to share that with teachers and staff?
When we
too?
send a message out to all groups or contacts on Blackboard Connect, it goes to teaching staff as well. And that could be, one of you could record a voice message as well. We could send it out through phone if you wanted to do that.
Actually,
It has a nice
your voice is so nice at 5:55 AM.
I think that's a good idea. Get a different voice. Because so they can do it at a time. And, I mean, in terms of the robocalls and the blast emails, to what extent can we use that to get out the vote? I mean, obviously.
You can use it to share information and
Right.
promote getting out to vote. You
Because I
can't
think,
promote a yes or
when
no.
you said 10% or 11% of the,
12
or 12% of the population, for the voting age, population voted.
registered voters, yeah.
It seems to me that one of the issues here is getting people out to vote.
Mhm.
And who's more likely to vote yes on a budget than a parent? as opposed to a retiree on fixed income.
Well, that's where we have to be
But
careful.
that's, yeah.
Well, no, I know, but I'm just saying, but
That's
if
a
you,
sticky
if you're announcing,
$1,000 question.
if you're announcing on the robocall or the blast email, remember, it's important for everybody to vote. Vote is gonna be on June 18th. And not just do it once, but maybe
Yeah.
several times, and maybe have different voices.
Yep.
In the
So if
morning
we're
of.
if we're notifying the electorate, then we're being selective in that case.
Not
About
if-
notifying just the parents of the school
But
and
we're
stuff.
not. Not if we send out another informational, and post it in the Addison and do front porch forum, and we could do our town Facebook pages.
We're still doing a flyer at some point too.
If the only thing you did was send that
Yeah.
message out through Blackboard Connect that we know only reaches
Then
families, I
segregate.
think someone could make us think of it, but if you're sending a lot of messages and that's one of them, I think that's safe.
One other thing that I haven't talked to Kathy about it, but it's gonna be very hard for me in that meeting to be a note taker and a participant. And so I would like to enlist a community member to take some notes so that Kathy and I can focus. I mean, we can take our own notes, but somebody who we know can keep proper notes for us moving forward.
In particular, is the only town that has two, everyone else has three or more.
That's true.
reps, So.
Cause there's gonna be I feel like a lot of information and I don't wanna miss anything and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm in it.
Yeah.
So.
I think that makes good sense to me. Liz?
Well, and that's where the exit cards that match the Google survey come in handy, because we'll be able to split those up after the end of the meeting and process them at home and compile the information that way as well.
Yeah.
And we'll have like an hour to do that.
I guess we should get into what questions are we asking? So that way we can make that survey and we can get it posted along with, these meeting dates and times and spaces and.
If we're gonna go back to the voting questions that you had, I know, what made you vote, right? Like, what made you vote yes or no, why?
No, it was,
Or is
what
that-
information do you need to vote yes?
Thank you.
We don't want to ask them whether they voted yes or no.
Okay,
Lead them with that. We just,
What
And-
information do you need to vote?
what information do you need to vote yes?
can we, I'm thinking we've got like priority lists and I don't know enough about the budget, Patrick, to even know like what you're considering, but I know that we had a bunch of questions community members were asking about. So I'm wondering, I really liked, Erin, how you put in the survey of the like, things that we need to know right now, it's
Mhm.
immediate, and things that we need to know, like they're important, but maybe not for a while. The idea of a priority list for folks to be like, what are things that you need to see change for this budget? And then what are your long-term goals, like long-term expectations and hopes? That, I'm not trying to get into like people putting their long-term hopes and dreams for the school district. I'm just trying to make sure that we can separate out and have people think. Also as an opportunity to think about what is my priority at this moment? And then what are the things that I need to put down lower on my list because we can't get everything.
So if we had sort of this overarching of what information do you need to vote yes? And then underneath that, like, here are the priorities of what would make that happen, is sort of what I'm hearing.
Can I just jump in though? I think that's limiting because A, they might have already voted yes. B, it might not be information that they need, right? It may be they want is what change do they want? I think I like the idea of what are your priorities for this budget and what are your priorities for the future better. And I think the to vote yes is pushing a little bit of boundary in the what's appropriate. But it's more, I don't know. So I think the priority labeling a priority would be great, because then it could be, the various things that we've heard for reasons for why people voted no, and not necessarily, but not assuming that who the crews who are showing up to these are people that didn't vote yes in the first place. So I think I like the priorities.
Okay,
The answer might just be nothing, I voted yes.
so
What do
then,
you find confusing about the budget and or the budget process?
I like that, because that could also help us with our next.
And that's all of your 2 hours right there talking
Yeah.
about confusing about the budget process.
Yes, true.
Can we also ask the
good point.
question of, for whether it's like, people write it down, and they come in, I still think, hey, my sticky notes plan, I know I'm saying that it's not here, that's okay, I'll bring it back someday. What do you want the board to know? Or like, yeah, what do you need to communicate to the board? I'm still thinking that could be very helpful for folks. And the reason why I'm thinking be helpful for folks is not necessarily like, obviously it's gonna be helpful for us. But I'm also thinking, how do we set everybody up so when they're coming into this space, they are having the opportunity to say what they came for their message. They know it's going to be received and heard. And also that then allows us to focus on getting into the meat of like, what do we need to have for the budget?
I think that's a great lead-in question. What is it that you want the board to hear? And then we can sort of tailor the rest of the meeting to, okay, we hear you. Now, what will it take to move you along the continuum to a positive vote? I think those would be two dynamic questions. And leave it at those two. I think that'll eat up an hour and a half pretty fast.
Then can we make our survey a little bit longer? So that folks who have like more things that they want to share, maybe we go into Liz's idea about a few different questions. If we're gonna send out the survey, we can have those be the first two, and then maybe we have those other three on there, because the reality is if people are responding, even if we're not using it for this budget right here, it's still like, we're not gonna be able to send another survey in the summer and be like, hey, now can you tell us how you feel? Like, let's do one survey that gets both our short-term and our long-term. What do you think? Am I speaking in like full complete sentences?
Yes.
Great.
I'm just trying to nail down the first two so that we know like exactly, because we've had sort of two floating ideas. We have what do you want the board to know, which is sort of our lead in, get to the nuts and bolts of what people want, but then are we going into, how does that then translate into what priorities we have for a budget, or are we pushing this idea of a yes vote? Because those are two totally different ways to approach this conversation. So which one is it?
What information do you need, Patrick, to put the budget together? Do you need to know what the priorities of the community are?
At this point, I need a target from the board to know what to hit. I mean, I brought to you last time where I would go with up to $580,000 in savings. If that's not enough savings, I would look further and I'd bring that to you. If that's enough savings, it would be somewhere in there.
Okay. So then what do we need? I guess, what information do we need to get out there?
To give me a target.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think one of the most important questions is to figure out, is it the taxes? Like, is your primary concern that the taxes are going up, in which case we need to lower the overall budget? Or is your primary concern something else that's happening here? And it may be taxes are first and special education challenges are second. So that gives us a sense of like, okay, it has to come down, but we need to, I'm not doing a good job for you, I'm just talking off the cuff to say, then we would want to make sure that we're preserving special education on top of everything else, like. So sorry, I'm thinking out loud right now, but what I was trying to say is, I would need to know if people needed to be less, if people need different things to be cut, or if it's a combination of the both.
And I think you get to that with Steve's question. What's gonna take it? What do you need to get to yes? Lower taxes, better special ed.
for example.
I mean, you
Can
could
we-
rephrase the question and say, what would it take for you to feel positive about the budget?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're not like,
Yeah.
oh, I got a yes.
Right.
Which is all sort of funny, right? Like, I think it goes without saying that when the board puts something out to be voted on, they think it's the right thing and they are hoping for a yes. So it feels almost disingenuous to pretend like we don't want you to say. yes.
Right.
But
Whether we can
that's-
guarantee you
But
will
there's
be.
a line there, exactly, you're right. That was sort of, I had that same reaction about, are we walking a fine line there with what Steve said, but when I thought about it, I was like, what do we need to do for you to be able to say yes? Like,
Right.
that's the
Right.
information the board's looking for to craft a budget that they have success with. And that's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in the end,
Yeah.
in the end, we're gonna put out a budget and hopefully we'll do as much as we can to make
Yeah.
people feel good about it.
Right.
So it wasn't so much convincing them to say yes to a target that's already put out, as much as it is inform me on what target to set to get you to say yes.
Right. We are coming to you to help us
Set the target.
to get this next iteration to pass.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm gonna be a little bit of a stickler, because I don't wanna be here till 11 tonight, and just say, so those are the two questions that we're gonna do in public. What do we want the board to know? What do you want the board to know? And what would it take to make you feel positive about the budget? Those are our two overarching questions, and whatever comes out naturally out of that is your conversation to have. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, then we can extrapolate and add more to a survey if we feel we need to, or for this time, do we just send those two things? And ask the same two questions of everyone who gets it?
I think we can stick with those two questions because if people have more questions, they're gonna ask us. I mean, I don't know if that's too narrow-minded, but I think we have to really keep this tight and we need to keep it concise.
And the first question is wide open.
Yeah.
So
And
you're
this,
going to
and this
get-
is why
You're going to
we're
get
here.
all sorts of information out of number one.
Yeah,
And it makes it really easy to theme with, if they're just two questions, instead of having lots of different questions on multiple different modes.
If it's a survey where you can write a narrative response.
right.
People can put as little or as much
Mhm.
as they want to, or pop whatever they want in there, quite frankly.
right.
Answering the question or not.
Yeah.
And
So
so is the survey anonymous?
That's,
we can make it that way.
yeah, and then we're not gonna run it through MAUSD Google account, right?
I have to figure out how to do that, but we can
Okay.
do that. So that's what I'm gonna put as our survey questions out.
Wait,
Mhm,
sorry, I have a question.
mhm.
If we run the survey through MAUSD and its board, does that then make it a public record? Like, could people like do the request of records?
Yes.
Okay.
I think anything we do is
Yeah.
a public record.
There are certain specific exemptions, but as a general rule, if you assume it's a public record, it's the appropriate way to go.
So are people's survey responses then becoming public record? Like, how do we make sure that,
Well, if the responses don't have any
Identifiers on it.
identifiers,
Yeah.
then
okay,
If it's not a requirement to put your name in or whatever, then there's nothing tied to you, right? Okay, all of the other questions that we had, I'm
Maybe.
couching.
Maybe to her point, we put some sort of like
yeah.
note, heads up, like, don't put identifying things in this,
Mhm.
because it
Okay.
becomes, like, I would hate for somebody to name
Yeah,
their
yeah.
child
Sure.
or something, right?
Right.
Like, and not
that's
realize,
a
so I
very-
yeah,
would
they
want
start
to.
going off on an example of something.
Right, yeah.
Very
just-
good point.
Yeah, so maybe up in the header, we say, take this, but please note in big red bold letters.
Matter of public record,
Yes.
Okay,
please exclude all private information.
And we can do a little deeper dive into, like, I'm thinking about, we've done thought exchanges in the past that have had thousands of responses.
Mhm.
I don't know if all, and that information is really synthesized into actionable information for the board. I don't know that every single one of those thousands of responses is public record. Inevitably, when you get that kind of participation, there's gonna be something that could sort of be identifiable, especially in small communities, so we can get an opinion on to what extent that is public record or not, but
Right.
it's an interesting question.
Mhm. Okay, so all other things that we've talked about, I'm sort of couching for future things to build into other community outreach things. Do people feel comfortable with the dates we've set, the spaces we've chosen? and the questions that we have. Do
Okay,
people-
how's the questions? one
I
more
was just
time?
gonna say, the two questions we have are, what do you want the board to know? And what would it take to make you feel positive about the budget?
We're not. We're not letting them. Is, yes, I'm not trying to make this more complicated, I'm not trying to get this here until 11, I'm just realizing that we're not actually, like. Getting at the like, what do you need right now? Like, could we?
First question.
First question.
Yeah, that's
Everybody start with that?
Yeah, I
Okay,
think so. What do you need us to know?
okay, what do you need us to know right now?
Yeah,
Mhm.
no
What needs to
hold
change
barred,
now?
go ahead and empty your soul
Okay. Can I just get a thumbs on those two questions? Thumbs up means yes, you agree with them, good to go. Awesome, okay. The
And then
action,
when we announce them, when they're going out, we say where they're gonna be, who's gonna be there.
yes.
Okay,
Mhm, mhm. And I'm gonna do that relatively soon as I get confirmation from everybody about their space.
I
So,
emailed Adora on that tomorrow.
wonderful.
And I gave both the schools a heads up that requests would be coming, just to be thinking about it and make it happen.
We got clearance for the town hall.
Sweet. Next thing is to adopt the community interactions questionnaire, which is just those two questions. So can I get a motion to approve? Those,
oh, sorry, do you have to say them?
the two questions of what do you want the board to know right now? And what would it take to make you feel positive about the budget?
so.
Steve,
Second.
Kristen, all those in favor of those two questions being the community interactions questionnaire, please say aye. Any opposed? And Brad
He had to
has
move his car.
abstained. Um, okay, next is to
He's
approve
an
the
abstention, that's.
okay, and the next thing is an action to approve the plan for community engagement, which I think is just when and where at this moment in time, and knowing that we will have a ground rules document and our two questions.
And that those two questions will be distributed via,
Yeah,
Survey.
and other surveys, yep. So can I get a motion to approve that plan for community engagement?
So moved.
Kristen? Sorry, who seconded? Second. Kathy? All those in favor of that plan, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Brad's abstained. Okay. Okay, we'll open the floor for public comment at 8:03.
Hi again. Thank you, guys. I just had a few things just to hopefully be helpful. Part of the parental compact, for parental involvement in Title I actually suggests to ask the PTOs to help, which I think is a really, really great resource. I mean, not all PTOs are super active, but they are a good voice in the schools and they can get the information out as quickly as possible. And some people are really, really helpful at putting them in folders and distributing the messages really, really quickly. I hate that part, but other people really like that part. So, I mean, putting posters on, at the grocery store, at the banks, at wherever, I mean, this is about community engagement, so like, ask us for help too. I mean, like, I want to get the message out because I want people to be engaged and get this information. I don't want the budget to fail. I want it to pass. I want to have us get all of our needs met and have our schools be the best that they can be. You know, I want to be able to help, and I know other people do too. So asking us if we can help, maybe not everyone can, but if we can, there are going to be people that will help. So PTOs, or just in the survey, say, is there anyone that would be willing to volunteer for watching children in the same room for just a few minutes while their parent can have a conversation? You know, things like that would be helpful. Or are they willing to post this in their front porch forum or on their Facebook, share the message on Facebook, boosting the ad on Facebook? I mean, there's just so many options for getting the information out. And you can, like with Facebook ads, you could actually, it's super cheap, but you can target the community as just people that live in that area, and it targets them based on an algorithm. And I mean, not everybody uses social media, but a good chunk of them do. So I think setting the date for the vote is incredibly helpful, because it puts the urgency on the community that says, we are wanting to listen, so we need you to come and engage. And telling them we have a date because this is the timeline that we're working with, and it makes them realize that one, you're really, really trying, but two, this is not an unlimited amount of time. We've got to do this when we can, and it gives a sense of transparency and makes things less anxiety filled, in my opinion. Repeating the message over and over and over until you have no more voice, just keep going, because that's what gets the message out. And then as far as the questionnaire, I just was hoping to clarify, you're gonna put out the questionnaire and then also at the in-person engagement, have people ask the questions there? Is that the way? Okay, just wanted to check, because I want to spread the message again about engaging. So that's all. I think you guys are doing a really great job, and I'm looking forward to engaging with as many people as possible. The last thing is maybe possibly offering like a question and answer session with Floyd or Patrick or people that really have like specific questions. I mean, lots of people have the same questions. Having them available for a certain time, whether other board members are there or not, but giving that as an option, I think some people would also find that helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we make posters? Or does it have to go, does everything have to go through you? I spent a lot of time with my like essential school board workbook, but I don't know what we can and can't do.
Well, we can set out different things, yeah. If by posters, you mean like flyers to hang at the grocery stores and things?
Yeah.
Yeah. We can do that. Any other public comment at this time? No. Okay.
When we put the poster out or the flyer, what are we titling this? Community engagement with the MAUSD board on the budget, how are we titling this? Budget.
Gotta be, we need to not be so stale.
Yeah.
Budget talk with Ashley and Kathy. Like,
Actually, because I'm older.
Yeah.
I
You know,
think they need to understand that we are asking them to do the talking for the most part. We're not giving them so much information.
Right, it's not an informational meeting
Community
that we
budget.
are presenting,
Community
it's,
budget.
it's fact finding.
Yeah, and
Oh, community budget.
That's
That's good.
Community budget input opportunity.
Oh,
Anyone?
that's a good one.
I dropped out of ours. but it's- Anybody good at graphic design or anybody?
that's what they made Canva for.
Oh, that's true. So I could drop out.
Okay,
Camp is good.
all right,
You
friends.
gonna do it? Is it you? You're gonna make the focus for us?
Maybe.
No.
The next thing on our agenda is an executive session. And it's under T1 VSA 5313 A1B Labor Relations Agreements with Employees. And first, we need to find that premature general public knowledge would place us at a substantial disadvantage. So could I please get a motion for that?
So moved?
Daniela? Barb, all those in favor of finding that premature general public knowledge would place us at a disadvantage, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Then we need a motion to enter executive session for the T1 VSA 5313 A1B labor relations. May I please get a motion?
That'll be specifically the support staff
yeah.
DBA.
Yep, for support staff CBA, and we'll invite in Patrick and Katrina.
So moved.
For about Floyd.
Oh, just Patrick and Katrina.
I guess go home.
Steve
So-
first or
sorry.
second? Melissa second? All those in favor? Steve first.
Melissa.
Yep, Melissa second. All those in favor of entering executive session at 8:09, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. 8:34. Okay, so we need an action item to ratify the MAEA ESP collective bargaining agreement.
Also to just move forward.
Cal said to go.
Yeah, since we're going back into executive session, so
Okay.
he seems fine.
So can someone make a motion to ratify the MAEA ESP collective bargaining agreement?
So moved.
Barb?
Well, second.
Then All those in favor of ratifying the agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And then Ashley. And then we need a second one to authorize me.
That's the next, oh yeah, and
Authorize
authorize
the-
the- yeah, sorry, I skipped it.
That's okay.
Yep.
And then secondly, we need an action to authorize the chair to sign the MAEA ESP collective bargaining agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Kathy? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Great, thanks for doing all the work that you and Barb have done.
Okay. We're gonna go back into the same, we're gonna go into the same executive, so T1, VSA 5 through and 3A, 1B, labor relations agreements with employees. And this requires us to find that their premature general public knowledge would place us at a disadvantage. So can I please get a motion?
So moved. Second.
Daniela,
Barb.
Barb. All those in favor of finding that premature general public knowledge would place us at a substantial disadvantage, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? And we need a motion to enter executive for T1 VSA 5 through and 3 A1B labor relations at 8:36.
Specifically,
And specifically for the professional staff side letter, inviting in Patrick and Katrina. Just
if you
Patrick.
can go home if she wants.
Are you gonna talk about next week's meeting or? After we come out or no?
Next week's meeting?
Next week's meeting?
Okay, I might have missed it when I was. On the clock. Okay. If not, I'm out.
Okay. Okay, so just inviting in Patrick. So can I please get a motion to enter executive at 8:36 for the professional staff side letter, inviting in Patrick?
So moved.
Kylie? Second? Who? Daniela? All those in favor of entering executive session at 8:36, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. All right, so the next item is action for authorizing the board chair to sign a side letter to MAEA for the professional collective bargaining agreement.
So moved.
Kathy, second. Melissa? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Next, we have adjourning.
So moved.
We want to talk about,
Yeah.
we want to
Do
talk
we
about the
wanna-
agenda?
Yeah, do we want to talk about the agenda before we do that? For Tuesday, yep. The 14th.
Well, not just Tuesday.
Mhm.
I mean, I just wanted to kind of run through the current scenario in my head, just to, so I got it straight.
Sure.
We're gonna meet 13th and 14th for the community.
Mhm.
Then we're gonna have information session and a regular business meeting on the 14th.
No business meetings the 28th.
So it's just an informational session.
So right now it's the informational session and we should add to that, setting the date for revote. Right?
Okay,
So that would be part of that. If we want to add a budget target to that is something we haven't discussed. And doesn't feel like people feel ready to do that without community input. So that's why just the date on the 14th.
do we want to put it on the agenda and then we can table it if we don't feel we want to use it? Just in case for some reason there's a Shazam and,
Okay.
The event time.
okay, and then is that it for the 14th?
That's it for the 14th so far, yeah. And then the 28th is a regular business meeting.
So. And then. So going back to what Justin was talking about earlier in terms of the turnaround, or Mike was also mentioning, but sort of the turnaround of information.
Mhm.
We need to give Patrick some indication of where we want him to go on the 14th. So that he can come back to us on the 28th with a draft. And if we're all happy with the draft,
So that's why we had set that target for the 13th, right? That Patrick was was gonna send us something. We had said the 13th, so that we could get that information.
Well, Patrick's just giving us answers to our questions.
Right. Right, so we'll have time to digest and have a conversation.
Right, but
Right.
I'm talking about, we're going to give Patrick some feedback on the
Mhm.
14th. He's then going to process that, come up with a draft budget.
Mhm.
That draft budget is going to be presented to us on the 28th, at our 28th meeting.
As
Or
of
the
right, as of
21st.
right now, but we can.
I mean, this is in hopes that we're gonna turn everything around for the 18th, theoretically. We haven't set a vote
Right,
for the 18th, but we're working back as we were thinking it was the 18th.
yeah,
So
so are we wanting to add?
I'm just curious, let's just say Patrick came back to us with a draft on the 28th,
Mhm.
and we said, okay, that sounds good.
Mhm.
That means we vote on the amount and the warning of the 28th
Mhm.
In the ballot, yeah.
and the ballot. Does that get us to the 18th? Do we have time between the 28th and the 18th, or do we need to,
It's 3 weeks.
It's 3 weeks.
so
yeah.
do we need to do it on the 21st? Instead of the 28th? We need 4 weeks.
Patrick, can you get that work done by the 21st?
The draft budget? Yeah.
On the 14th.
Do we need to have, what's his name, come back and?
Sorry. I don't want that.
Liz?
That also brings up for me, when we're opening and closing the survey. That, because it's not, it takes, I mean, I'll commit to going through that and theming it, I guess. But I mean, that's, when are we opening and close? If we're planning on, so that timeline that was just laid out, like, that's, I mean, that's just something that I'm thinking of when I'm thinking about this survey and the results coming back and actually compiling that information. And if we're doing all of this on the 13th, and then we're going to go home with all the exit surveys and theme them that night and have them ready for the 14th, I mean, it's a ton, unless we're just subjectively saying the majority of what I heard was X, it takes time
Not only that,
to
but we're
go
meeting
through
on.
data.
We're meeting.
Go ahead,
Start
sorry.
off the meeting 14th, and you'll have an hour to process the information before we meet.
Yeah, Kathy.
I think this brings up a really good question of taking the notes. There should be a template for how we take the notes and collect the information so that you can pull the data off of it faster rather than like everybody scrawls notes differently. I take notes differently.
Mhm.
And if there's a template for, a general category, the comment and wants to see, then you'll have that or some other way. You can think of any other way you can do it. But I just think it would be really much more fruitful to try and extrapolate data.
Yeah. There's a few platforms that we've used. We've used the Thought Exchange platform before. There's also some other like Survey Monkey type things you could use to put stuff into.
I think Kathy's talking about handwritten stuff from your meetings.
Just what if we do it on the computer? Really,
If the general notes are being taken into something and then we take
Yeah.
all the stickies and use those as anecdotal evidence as well. I mean,
are we doing sticky?
I don't know.
Who said they were?
We said we were, right?
It seems like, data collection is a pinch point.
Yeah.
Data collection and us having the time to even process it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And give Patrick any kind of meaningful feedback on the 14th.
Liz, I can help you on the 14th if you want, before we go to our meeting. Okay, cool. Let's not do the sticky notes for this round, because that's gonna be chaos.
Okay, so we'll just use a platform to get those two questions, so either Thought
Thanks
Exchange
for
or
asking.
for Survey Monkey.
Yeah.
Okay,
And whoever's doing that, taking at the individual meetings will have that.
Yeah.
ready.
and then we'll do some, I don't think, so. To Steve's point, though, if we want to have some meaningful conversation about that information, that perhaps the 21st is a better time to do that.
I mean, not that I'm dying to have another meeting, but
Mhm.
I'm just. between Patrick giving us what he's been asked to give us. Although we'll have a chance to maybe throw our eyeballs on that a little bit early.
We're gonna try to have most of that to you Friday. Give a little bit more time.
All right,
The tenth,
great.
I see what you're saying, Steve. It gives a longer window.
Well, just for us all to,
digest it.
digest all of that,
Mhm.
and then God knows we won't want to discuss it, for what could be a fair amount of time.
I might,
Maybe we can do that on the 14th. I don't know. I'm just trying
I
to
might-
lay this out.
I might suggest that we need to do at least a first pass on the 14th, however imperfect.
Yeah.
Because I'm worried about the idea of us seeing a budget for the first time on the 28th.
Mhm.
And yes, we had the idea, like, if we approve of it, then that all still works. But it seems to me to send a bad message to the community that we kind of go into seeing the first budget a priori, planning to approve it.
Mhm.
Right, so if we can have Patrick present us a budget on the 21st, we very well might approve it the 21st, right? But if we had any concerns at that moment, then we'd have time before the 28th to express those concerns. And then have a second go. Otherwise, I think with the timeline, if it really is the 28th, the first time we're seeing an actual budget that we have to make a decision on, that might not give us time at all on the timeframe that we have. And so it's a sort of secondary concern of yours. So I think 14th, we give it a go of the information. Then when we see the budget on the 21st, we can continue that discussion, which I think is what you're suggesting. With more time to see community input. And hopefully we come to some collective agreement. at that
Yeah, I
point.
mean, we're trying to squeeze October, November, December, and January into
Yes.
4 weeks. But, I think that could work. I think at the same time, Patrick, are you able to, between now and the 14th, determine whether we need to warn it on the 21st or the 28th?
Yeah, I've already sent an email to Jennifer to figure out.
So you'll be able to say, hey, guys, if you want absentee ballots to spin around, then we gotta set the target on the 21st. Or the 28th.
28th, yeah.
Yeah, like what's the minimum window of time from warning to vote that allows for absentee ballots?
Yeah. Because if we're gonna delay it last time for that, it seemed kind of strange. But to do it again.
Okay, so we're adding a 21st meeting. Yes?
That's what was my
Or
question.
why not? We'd be lonely on Tuesday night.
I had two other things going on, so speak for yourself.
And if you can't come or need to attend on Zoom or whatever your circumstances, as long as we have a quorum, it's all cool. Okay, no stress. Okay. Feeling comfortable, Steve?
I just want to make sure we work that out before
Yeah.
we walked out the door.
Mm-hmm, smart.
Yeah. Maybe Aaron, I'm sorry, I really don't need to drive this on. Maybe Aaron, you were gonna send this out and you can just tell me to be quiet, but I guess I'm picturing myself rolling into Holly Hall potentially on Monday. And we're standing there in front of a room and asking our 2 questions and soliciting feedback, like that's what we're envisioning. Yeah, so I guess my only thing would be that community members are gonna roll in at different times.
Mhm.
And so we start the conversation at 6 and somebody rolls in at 6:30. Maybe we just print the 2 questions on like bigger posters to have them somewhere in the room so people know what we're asking about. That would be my only suggestion. Okay. My handwriting is not great, so.
All right.
I'm writing this.
For now, are people feeling comfortable with what's going? I will send out emails about all the things we've discussed so that everyone's on the same page, okay?
Thank you.
Great.
Okay,
Yeah.
we ready to adjourn or we need other?
Can I so move again?
Yeah,
Second?
all those in favor at 8:55?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.